Welcome to the first ever retro TV video review for a round table. In the past, we've done these on the blog, but we decided to start doing these on our YouTube channel as well. So here we are, and the first TV show we will be reviewing this week is Spenser for Hire. This is a show that starred Robert Urich and Avery Brooks. It was a show that was literally in the 80s and finished in the 80s, so it was a real 80s crime drama. The original release was from September 20th, 1985 to May 7th, 1988. It played for 3 seasons, and it had 66 episodes and 4 made-for-TV movies. I remember watching this TV show with my dad back in the day, along with Hunter, and it always stuck to me that this was always a show that we used to love, and I wanted to rewatch it again. I never really watched the full show, but I ended up getting the DVDs on Amazon. It was relatively cheap, actually, and I wanted to see if it still stood up, and it was actually pretty good. And all that to say, there seems to be enough of a fan base out there that there was Spenser Confidential on Netflix starring Mark Wahlberg. So there is a following for this TV show. But like normal, like usual TV shows from the 80s, some of them don't age very well, especially with the subject matter or the way that it's presented. But I wanted to see if this was actually still fun to watch. So the show first started out. It was based on the books by Robert B. Parker, and the character first appeared in the novel Good Wolf manuscript. I will be fully honest, full disclosure, I have never read the books. The one thing that always stuck in my mind, though, about this show is that it was filmed on location in Boston, Massachusetts, and that's not unusual. I mean, you had the TV show Cheers, right? That's from Boston. But what I remember the most was that the fact that it was filmed mostly in cold weather, at least from my recollection, there's always somebody that had a jacket on. And rewatching the pilot, it was deep freeze. Like, it was really, really cold. It's rare that you see them like in the summer or during warmer weather. It does happen. And it's a contrast with TV shows from that period of time where you had Magnum PI, Jake and the Fat Man, which, the Miami Vice, which was like always hot weather, warm weather, summer all year round, Hawaii, Miami. But this one was kind of different. It kind of went right into the deep freeze of Boston, and it was kind of like a badge of honor. At least that's what it feels like. They didn't shy away from that, and I'm sure because of that, the shooting costs were pretty high. And unlike most TV shows, the show was actually filmed mostly outside. There's a lot of action scenes, chase scenes. Rarely are there's not a lot of scenes that are filmed inside. Yes, there are inside scenes, but it's not as if like, they always go to the same the same location. It's always filmed. Unlike, the best way I could describe it is when you watch Law and Order, a lot of it is done inside. There's a few scenes that are outside, but most of it is inside. It's in the precinct, and once in a while they go investigate somebody. But the sets are pretty much like not that expensive, or you could you could actually rework them. Spenser seems to be a little bit different, where it just seems everything is so different. They really, everywhere they interviewed people for an investigation, or it seemed to be a different place in Boston, and it really put Boston at the forefront of the TV show, which it's actually refreshing. But I'm sure the cost went up because of that. The show ran on ABC, as I mentioned before, for 3 seasons, 66 episodes, and the one thing that I didn't remember is that the ratings were not that great. I always thought this was a popular TV show, and apparently it was not. And in fact, there were quite a few reviews I was able to find from the 1980s where they weren't very kind to the show itself. Here's one from the New York Times. Although far from a blockbuster hit, Spenser for Hire has been renewed for a 3rd season on ABC, using a private investigator character created by the novelist Robert B. Parker and developed for television by John Wilder. The series got off to a solid start, but then took a tumble into confusion and hack writing. Now, the beleaguered network has at least one good opportunity to get back to the basics of entertainment. I have another one here from the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times. Spenser is played by Robert Urich, a capable actor who you always feel should be doing something better than he's doing, but he never does. The show is shot in Boston and has a nice cinematic look, but the writing is so bad and the role so camp that you could substitute Bill Murray for Urich and not miss a beat. So that's just a few of the reviews, um, and and a lot of them came out like this, where it wasn't very fun reading these reviews. Like, it really, nobody really gave it a really good rating, and which I find odd. Having watched it, I don't know. I'll give my review a little bit later on, but this is just a bit of the background. But yeah, I'm a little bit mystified by that. I don't know if they were overly critical, but that's what it is. So during the show, there were kind of a few changes that happened, and that could have brought forward the reason why the show went down. So Susan Silverman, which is a character in the show, played by Barbara Stock, was the love interest of Robert Urich's character Spenser in the TV show, and for whatever reason, she didn't come back in season two. Now in the show, they kind of allude to the fact that she needed to find herself, essentially, and she didn't know if she could go, continue on with Spenser. The reality was, behind the scenes, they felt like they ran their course with the romance. And I think that kind of broke the momentum of the TV show. So the second season, they brought in McCormick, which was a love interest, Carolyn McCormick, which was the love interest. She was a DA, and it just never really was the same. So after season two, it looked like season two, they kind of like were going to push the whole romance thing with Carolyn McCormick. They seem to be getting closer, and then in season three, Barbara Stock is back. Susan is back in the TV show, and she comes back and shows up in the apartment. There's not really an explanation why, the actress Carolyn McCormick left the show. They decided to bring her back. Now, I did read some articles and I did see some videos where after season two, there was a bit of the show was threatened to be canceled, and I think it was Robert Urich that said that. Well, number one is to get renewal, and number two, I think if we're going to have a successful run in season three, we need to bring back Susan, which they actually did, and that's basically what they did. They brought back Barbara Stock in the third season. Behind the camera as well, they replaced John Wilder with Juanita Bartlett as executive producer. I didn't notice much of a difference between season one, two, and three. There were a few differences in terms of maybe the characters and how they acted, but the storyline was kind of pretty standard across the board. So that's basically what it is. And basically, the show was canceled. Now, the main reason, like most shows, they mentioned that apparently it was canceled because of the high cost. Unfortunately, that may be true, but also the low ratings didn't really help either. And also, it kind of had an issue with changing time slots as well. So it kind of had some time slots that were, but I mean, all in all, generally overview, it was a show that technically shouldn't have succeeded in a way, because they changed the executive producer. They moved in and out characters without really any reason. Like, it's one thing when you have a show like Law and Order that lasts so long, character change is good. It adds new life, it breathes new life. But in this type of show, which was at the time obviously didn't know it would be only 3 seasons, but at the end of the day, it kind of was the change was out of place, because a lot of people liked the character of Susan Silverman in the show. She kind of brought this warmth to the character and to the show, and a lot of people liked it. And when they removed her, that kind of didn't really work. And we'll get into it a little bit later on. So now that we got a bit of the background done, now we can go into the different characters of the show. So the first character is Robert Urich, and Robert Urich has a lot of he's played in a bunch of different things, including Chips, Vegas, um, you know, quite. He was in a lot of TV shows. Got Spenser for Hire, which he's probably known. I guess he's known most for. It's hard for me to think of him as in. Then again, I wasn't very familiar with the TV show Chips or Vegas, and other TV shows that he was on. So for me, in my mind, he was always Spenser. That's who I associated the actor with. Um, Let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. Sorry for that. So yes. So yeah, he also played in SWAT as well in 1975, Vegas in 1978, Gavilan in 1982. I have no clue what that is. And Spenser for Hire, but he has a whole list of accolades for that. He actually wasn't supposed to go into acting. Well, he started acting on the stage, and it's when he did a bit part with Burt Reynolds in the production The Rainmaker, and I guess Burt Reynolds must have liked what he saw, and then he convinced Robert Urich to go to Los Angeles to actually continue his career in acting. Which I think maybe until that point, Urich was kind of questioning if he should be acting or not. And I'm assuming if he started in theater, it's not as if they pay millions of dollars either for that. So I'm assuming that's basically what happened. So then he went to Los Angeles, and everything is fine. He did Spenser for Hire. Unfortunately, in 1996, sorry, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called synovial sarcoma, sorry. And he did his treatments, and even through his treatments, he continued acting. And in fact, in 2001, I didn't even know. I thought he passed away for whatever reason. I thought he passed away a lot earlier than when he did. Um, and I learned that he actually was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when it was Regis Philbin, and it was a celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he won $125,000, and he donated it to cancer research for the cancer that he was battling as well. Um, and yeah, and I didn't realize he actually passed away in 2002, April 16th, 2002. I thought he died. He passed away shortly after the show went off the air, like in the early 90s, but I was completely off base on that one. So, yeah, and he was married twice. His first time was to Barbara Rucker from 68 to 1974, and second time he was married with Heather Menzies in 1975, and he was married to her until his death in 2002 at the young age of 55. And basically, he passed away because the cancer that he had actually succumbed. He was in remission, came back, but the second time around, it didn't go as planned, and unfortunately, he passed away. The second character in the show that is probably the most notably known is Avery Brooks as Hawk. Um, Avery Brooks is probably known, at least for this generation, is probably known as mostly for Captain Sisko in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He's been like all over the place. When doing research for this review, it boggled my mind how much he actually did. He was a musician. He was a singer. He was an actor. He played on Broadway, or he played in theater. He released his own album. It's all over the place, and he actually has a bachelor and a master's degree in fine arts from Rutgers University. And he was born on October 2nd, 1948. So he's 72 now, 73, whatever. So he's getting up there in age, but he's still. It's weird seeing him with a white beard or white pinch. It's actually really weird, but I always picture him as Hawk, and so in my mind, see for me, so for some people where they associate him with DS9, for me I associate him with Hawk. To me, he's always was Hawk, and I always remembered Hawk as being a cool, calm, collected, um, a guy that wouldn't have a lot of airtime, but when he did do airtime, he was the super cool dude. And yeah, basically that's what he was. He was essentially a guy that was a hired gun, but he made friends with Spenser, and basically that's what it is. Now, I don't know if it was supposed to be like that from the beginning, where the two of them were supposed to be main characters, but they had a chemistry on camera, and it did really show. So that was cool. Um, he's had some accolades where apparently, and I've never seen this, so I apologize, but apparently he had critical acclaim for his role in the PBS American Playhouse production of Half Slave, Half Free, Solomon Northup's Odyssey. And as I mentioned before, and he's been nominated a bunch of things for different things he's been in. But he was also a singer, and he recorded an album that was dedicated to the legacy of Duke Ellington. And for the first time in his life, in 2009, he released a solo album called Here, which was apparently a jazz blues spoken word album. At least it was that. And he also taught at one point. He was a professor at Oberlin College, which is part of Rutgers University. And he was married in 1976 to Vicky Lenora. He's been married to them ever since. He has three adult children. She's an assistant dean at Rutgers University. Now, this is something I did not know, and I learned by doing the research. And this is why I love doing research for these types of reviews, because there's always this morsel of information that you never really realize. But apparently, according to and this was recorded in 2020, last year. According to the Seventh Rule podcast, which Avery appeared in, he insisted that he was not retired from acting, but he said that he was blacklisted in Hollywood. However, I don't know why he would be blacklisted. I couldn't find really a real good reason why he would be blacklisted. I wouldn't know why. Like, it's not as if he was ever. I didn't see any scandals, any controversy per se that really would tell me, oh yeah, Hollywood would blacklist him. But apparently, he said that if there would be a role that would come up, he would actually say he could potentially say yes to the role, and that kind of works into the fact that I think there was a rumor that he would come back as Captain Sisko. I'm assuming in one of those TV shows for Disney, like Picard or whatever, he would come back as Captain Sisko. That's that'd be awesome to see. But after that appearance on the show, there was an actual hashtag that was actually trending called "We Want Avery," and yeah, so that was a little morsel. I didn't realize that he was blacklisted. He doesn't have an agent. He doesn't have anything right now. But if the phone would ring, he said that he would take the role. So we'll see how that goes. It seems that he's still busy. He still does recording. He does albums and stuff like that. So he still does some stuff. All right. So the next on the list, another main character is Barbara Stock. Now, Barbara Stock is the love interest of Spenser. Barbara Stock plays the role of Susan Silverman in the show, and she's the love interest of Spock. She started her career, she was born on May 26th, 1956, in Downers Grove, Illinois. She started her career as a host of the morning show called Mid Morning on WTTV, which I think it's changed its name since then. And she was then cast to play in a play called Nine. She got her big break as Susan Silverman on Spenser for Hire, and after that, she made a career playing in secondary roles, and that's very common for a lot of these types of characters in the 80s. They kind of went through a whole slew, and I only kept a few, but she appeared in Chips, Facts of Life, Fantasy Island, Remington Steele, Knight Rider, Murder, She Wrote, and there's a ton more. and she never really had a steady role like she had on Spenser for Hire. And nowadays, she does interior decorating in the Los Angeles area, or roughly around there. So she seems to be somewhat successful doing that now. She doesn't seem to be acting much anymore, but and she appeared only in season 1 and season 3. So that's it. And there's not much more really to say about that. She's just a typical actress, but she did play her role really, really well. The one comment that I've seen floating around on some forums or on Reddit was the fact that she was a little bit too young compared to what she was supposed to be in the books. I mean, I didn't read the books, so to me it didn't really matter. And she did add that warmth that because Spenser is kind of like that brash. He's charismatic, but he has that he's a male, that macho. Uh, let's go all the time and let's resolve it. And she would be able to calm him down and reason with him and stuff. So I really appreciated the fact that she did that, and I think a lot of people like that. And I think she did it better in season 1 than she did in season 3. Season 3, she kind of seems like an afterthought, but in season 1, you see she actually has a real role in there, and it really it was really, really cool to see. So that's it. Next in line is Mr. Ron McLarty, which you're like, who the hell is he? And yeah, basically, I didn't really know much about him until I read up on him. He was born Ronald William McLarty, and he was born on April 14th, 1947, in East Providence, Rhode Island. Um, he did a lot of stuff after Spenser for Hire, which is kind of like similar to like what Avery Brooks kind of did in a way, just not the same things. But he kind of, he was a so he started in theater in the 70s, and his main, I guess, credit at that point was being cast in Moon Children. But then his first real big role was as Sergeant Frank Belsen in Spenser for Hire, which I think at the beginning he was supposed to be more of a comedy relief, and then they built the character a little bit to be a little bit more serious towards season 2 and season 3, to give him a little bit more depth to the character. Because in the first season, he's kind of like, you know, he's the typical cop that eats donuts and a lot of carbs, and he doesn't like Spenser too much because he's being hard on him because he always uses the the police station to get his what he needs in terms of information, and it rubs Ron McLarty the wrong way because he thinks that cops should be left to be doing the police work and not private eyes and so on and so forth. And I really have to say that they did. It's one of the few characters that I saw evolve through the whole series. A lot of the characters kind of stayed. I wouldn't say stale because it would mean that they kind of didn't do their job very well. But I feel that they didn't really elevate the storyline. Their character really didn't evolve that much throughout the whole series. It was more constant. Whereas uh, Sergeant Frank Belsen was more of a comedic thing at the beginning, kind of a throwaway character that would be like comedy slight kick, and then they kind of tried to make him a little bit more serious as they went along, and that's it. So after he left Spenser, he did continue acting though. He's modal. You probably have seen him in Law and Order at some point in time. Um, he was a judge. He was on Law and Order SVU. He was on the original Law and Order. He was on Law and Order SVU, and I think he was on a few others as well. So he he did have bit parts, um, and he did star in a show called Cop Rock, which didn't last very long. He did lend his voice to Batman Dark Tomorrow, which is a video game, which is actually pretty cool. And he did a lot of voice narration for Audible books. and he was very popular. He won awards for that. So he was very very successful in doing that. And unfortunately, starting in his last acting credit was in 2014, which is actually when he started showing signs of dementia. And unfortunately, he succumbed to that dementia on February 8th, 2020, at the age of 72. Actually, it's very recent. Um, he was married twice. He was married to his first wife, Diane Testor, until he died in 22. Uh, Oh no, sorry. He was married to his first wife, Diane Tessitore, until she died in 2002, and then he remarried in 2004 to Kate Skinner until his death in 2020. Until now, he has three children. The last one, oh no, the second to last one is Carolyn McCormick, which I've seen around. It's one of those characters where I've seen her around, but it was hard to put my finger on it. And yeah, so Carolyn McCormick was basically born on September 19th, 1959, Midland, Texas. She came in kind of the love interest replacement in season two of Spenser. She went to Williams College and graduated in Bachelor in Fine Arts and a Master's in Fine Arts. Um, she's been on quite a few shows. You're probably know her from Law and Order. Again, but she was but she's been there for a lot, like quite a few episodes. Dr. Elizabeth Olivet, and she's been on pretty much all the all of the different branches of Law and Order. She also had walk-ins on or cameos in Elementary, Judging Amy, and Homicide: Life on the Streets. Something that is really cool, and I did not know. And again, this is why I love doing research. She did multiple voices in the video game Deus Ex, and she was the voice of Anna Navarre, one of the main villains at the beginning of the game. So she was actually a lot, but she did a lot of other voices in the game as well, like a lab technician and stuff like that. But her her main voice was Anna Navarre from Deus Ex, which is pretty really cool. She married Byron Jennings. Kind of iffy. We don't know when, but she has two kids with him. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Carolyn McCormick. And I will go into like the whole series and how it unfolds in the actual review next. And the last character, last but not least, Mr. Richard Jaeckel, which I had no clue who he is, and I put him last because he's easy to forget. He's actually one of the few characters that left on his own before the show ended at the beginning of season three. I think 4 or 5 episodes in, he has an angina attack, and then he has to realize that he has to retire, and then you probably you don't see him till I think the last episode. I think he does a few cameos after that, but he pretty much left after that in season three. He kind of had a career that spanned about 6 decades, so roughly 50-55 years. Um, he never had really huge roles per se, but he had a lot of bit parts, and he was really popular. He had a lot of stuff in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And yeah, I didn't even know him from anything really. Um, he actually played, and this is where I thought that I saw him before, but I didn't know where. And then I read this, and I'm like, oh. He played in Delta Force 2, The Colombian Connection, with Chuck Norris, which is pretty cool. And apparently, I didn't know this at all. I didn't remember this at all. But he also played as Lieutenant Ben Edwards on the series Baywatch. He has two sons, but he died. He passed away on June 14th, 1997, from cancer at the Motion Picture and Television Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. And that's pretty much all the actors that we have for the TV show. Now we're going to be looking at the ever so popular review of the TV show. So, what did I think of the TV show? I don't think it's as bad as what critics gave it up to be. And I came watching this TV show right after watching Jake and the Fat Man, which lasted 5 seasons. And this one is a bit different, and I find the quality better in this than in Jake and the Fat Man. Jake and the Fat Man feels like it's popcorn. Uh, it tugs on whatever. It's like chocolate or soft drink, right? You want something sweet, you get it, and it satisfies your craving. There seems to be a quality to Spenser for Hire in terms of the TV show, and the way that uh, I can actually compare this TV show. There's a bunch of different private eye shows out there. There was Mike Hammer, Magnum PI. Those are the ones I remember from the top of my head. But it feels better quality than those. Mike Hammer had the no, movie noir kind of thing going for it, detective, and it kind of took a bit from that in terms of like Robert Urich actually narrates his thoughts throughout the show between scenes. You have parts Magnum PI in a sense that he's kind of a PI that kind of does whatever he needs to do in his Mustang for the most part. Um, so he kind of blend everything together, but it had this element of quality to it, and you saw that it had a budget. Even in the later seasons, where apparently they ran out of money, or they didn't have, it was too expensive. It still had the money for it. Um, so from that perspective, I kind of and do I feel that the seasons went on? It didn't get necessarily weaker. There's shows that got a lot worse. Like if I look at MacGyver, for example, the first three seasons were amazing. 4 and 5 were in the middle, and then 6 and 7 they kind of ran out of ideas and it ran too long. This didn't have a chance, and in a way, it kind of the fact that they got a third and final season when they knew it was the final season, they had a way of closing out a lot of the characters, the arcs and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. And I didn't feel that it was drawn out. I think it felt perfectly fine. Like I've been watching it for the last month now. I think I have a few episodes left, but for the most part, it's still pretty good season to season. Like I don't really see a dip in quality per se. One of the main critiques that everybody had at the time was the fact that the writing is horrible. It's hack writing. And I don't see it per se. Now, I will say this. Coming in from watching Jake and the Fat Man, I kind of watched the first episode and it didn't grab me right away. I had to watch like 4 or 5 episodes for it to actually like grow on me. Having said that, I love Avery Brooks, and I think he refined the character as he went along, but he felt really stiff in the first few episodes, at least the first half of the season of of season one, and then the writing was a little bit off. It's gonna sound weird, but it sounds like the dialogue was a white guy trying to write for a black guy, and it didn't work. And as much as Avery has that charisma and that coolness to him, it was rough in the first few. He is still pretty cool, but he's a little bit rough along the edge, and he kind of got refined as you go along. He's a lot better in the second season of season one, and then he becomes the character that everybody kind of grows and loves. The one thing I find odd about this TV show, if it was such a stinker in the ratings, I don't understand why they did a spin-off series with Hawk called A Man Called Hawk, which lasted only 13 episodes, which I would still like to see the 13 episodes. Because it's weird, because usually a spin-off, it's when you have a successful TV show, you have a spin-off. This one wasn't really successful per se. It was always at the bottom of its ratings. I think one season it ended up like 60th or something in this ratings, which is horrible. And that's what I find weird. But in any case, I think that Robert Urich and Hawk do have a great chemistry together on screen. I think Robert Urich has a lot of charisma, and I'll go on a limb here and say that it's rare that you have a character with that much charisma on TV. And the only one that I can see that had that much charisma throughout its run was Richard Dean Anderson as MacGyver. No matter what he did, he always was able to make the show better in a scene, whatever the case may be. Robert Urich has that charisma. And I think that's what makes the show really tick. He has charisma. The coolness of Hawk together is really awesome. Sometimes it's a little bit weird how they get together and how they always cross paths. It's kind of it's a weird thing. But they work really well together on screen. I think the charisma is fine. Sometimes the writing is the writing. I mean, people are criticizing the writing for this, saying it was hack writing, but I mean, there's other shows that had really bad writing and it was really good. Let's look at Knight Rider, right? Um, so that's fine. So those are the two main characters. Then you had Barbara Stock, who played Susan Silverman, which was the love interest of Spenser, and that really complemented all three together. And then you had the cops, who kind of were throw-ins because he needed somebody on the inside in the cop station, police station, to do some of his work. And it kind of sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's really weird. I found at the beginning it was kind of just throwaway characters. I mean, um, what's his name? Richard Jaeckel as a sergeant, um, basically was just our lieutenant. He was just there. He kind of was very generic. There was anything special. Yeah, there's a few episodes where he was the main focus, but in general, he was just a generic character in a station, um, which it's fine. He had running. I know I read sometimes like in some of the synopses, like he was firm with Spenser, and he was very firm in helping him, hesitant to help him. No, and most of the time he would actually help him. Like I don't know where they got that from, but in any case. And then Frank Belsen, which was a little bit different. He started off as being kind of like a side thing, where he would be like comedy relief, a guy that would hate Spenser. And then as the character grew, they kind of made him into more of a central character to Spenser. Um, Especially in season three, once Richard Jaeckel left, he kind of took center stage. Apparently, there's a new lieutenant that comes in, and to replace Richard Jaeckel's character. And then Belsen's like, "Oh, I can't really help you anymore because new boss." And he thought that he was going to be lieutenant, and he ended up not being lieutenant, so he stayed as a sergeant. Even though they put in a good word for him that he would be a good lieutenant. So they hired somebody else, which I don't understand that. I didn't understand why they did that. They could have just put him as lieutenant and just take another cop to be like replace him on the force, right? Um, I think that would have been a better thing, but they never really did that, and he ends up helping Spenser anyways, even though he says he's not supposed to. So they got really a lot more closer as the TV show went on. They became more buddy, and I find that he was more of an essential character as you went along. Um, Carolyn McCormick, I think, was just a mistake, and nothing. It's not because of her. Honestly, it has nothing to do with her. Uh, it's just it didn't click, and I think that she would have been a lot better. Um, she would have been a lot better if she would have. I don't know. They didn't get somebody with a lot of charisma. It just didn't feel like they would have clicked. Like Susan Silverman or Barbara Stock and Robert Urich, they kind of had that chemistry on screen. You you felt they had a chemistry. You believed they had a relationship. They loved each other. They truly cared for one another. Carolyn McCormick came in as a one of those like harsh DAs, and then she warms up to Spenser, and then they kind of go into this. It was supposed to grow into like this evolving love interest that goes from being, cold to warmer to friendship to actual love. And they kind of got to that, but it was awkward. I at least found it was awkward. It found like it was forced. I didn't believe they really cared for each other. She was more of a character that could have been written off, to be honest. I don't think she needed to be there. I think the producers wanted somebody to actually care for her, but or have somebody that Spenser cares for, but it just didn't work. It didn't work at all, and that's why they brought back Susan in season 3. Um, as a whole, do I recommend this? I mean, having reviewed Hunter, Jake and the Fat Man, Equalizer, countless others of the same genre of TV show, from a quality perspective, I think it would be up there. I mean, it's filmed outside. It's known for its, and I really appreciate the fact that the show didn't shy away from the brutal winters in northeastern America. Like, it's Boston. The pilot, poor Robert Urich, he must have froze his boop boop off, because in some scenes he only has like a small sweater because he loses his jacket for whatever reason. And he's chasing after a criminal. My word, it looked so cold. And for most of the show, it's always a little bit colder. Like when they filmed it in and I'm sure that really didn't help for costs. But I appreciate it didn't shy away from that, and it gives the show character. And all these years later, as I mentioned at the beginning, that's kind of what I remembered the TV show for. So if you want to look at something from Robert Urich, something that's charismatic, and you want to know the backstory of why Spenser Confidential came to be, if you didn't really like it that much, I think it's worth a shot to look at Spenser for Hire, the original series in the 80s. Obviously, I did not read the book, so I don't know how it compares to the books, but I think it's something that's worth it. It's a rare TV show that didn't last too long, so they didn't have time to wing too much. They didn't run out of ideas. It didn't feel that way. Maybe in season 3, you see that there's a couple of episodes, around Frank Belsen, his character. I feel that maybe in season 3, Hawk is maybe not as present as other seasons. But yeah, in general, I enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I don't think there's one season better than the other, to be honest. Maybe there's individual episodes that I find that are better than others, but it's really, it's fine. They don't really go into much of his backstory. Apparently he was a boxer. Robert Urich Spenser was a boxer in the past. But they never really go into detail. They kind of mentioned that he was a boxer and he lost at one point. That's why he quit. But I mean, it's in passing. It never really goes into detail of the backstory, and it'd be really cool. It would have been cool to see like either a backstory on Hawk or a backstory on, a more in-depth explanation on the backstories of some of these characters. Um, yeah, that's it for the review. I think I would recommend it. So I liked it. I really liked it. That was everything that I thought about the show. I think it's worth the view. And the thing that's great about this TV show is you don't have to watch it one after the other for the arc. You can watch these out of order. It makes zero difference. And I appreciate that, because sometimes I'll be like a couple of weeks without watching a show. And it's appreciated to have that. So, having said that, if you guys want to read our reviews, you can go to roundtable.ca. You can read reviews like this one. We review TV, music, movies, and TV shows, as you know, and we have quite a few videos now up on video game reviews, movie reviews, and music reviews. So check that out. Don't forget to subscribe at the bottom, and I shall see you next time. Have a good one, guys. Ciao.